Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. My name is Mark R. LePage, and you are listening to Entre Architect Podcast, where each week I speak with inspiring, passionate people who share their knowledge and expertise, all to help you build a better business as a small firm entrepreneur architect. Today we're joined by Brad Farris of Anchor Advisors, a seasoned expert in helping agency and expert firm owners like us break through the $1 million barrier and build thriving multi-million-dollar businesses. For over 2 decades, Brad has been in the trenches with leaders, guiding them to sharpen their focus, raise their prices, hire smarter, and ultimately grow with purpose. His insight: success is less about what you do and more about who you decide to be. Today, we're digging into what it really takes to prepare your firm for scale and ultimately for sale. Brad Farris, welcome to Entre Architect Podcast.
Thanks, Mark. I'm glad to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. I love talking about this kind of stuff. Talking about businesses and scaling and how do we grow businesses to multi-million-dollar companies where we can sell them and go off and reap the rewards, right?
Do whatever it is we want to do.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah.
But I want to know who you are. Where did you come from? How did you get to where you are today? When did you discover your passion for what you do, and who or what inspired you to get started?
So I started life as an engineer, an electrical engineer coming out of college, did a bunch of engineering type work. I worked in an aerospace business. I worked in a consumer products business. And at a certain point, I got frustrated because I could build the product exactly the way the marketing guys told me to build it, and it still wouldn't be a success in the marketplace. And I wanted to work on things that were successful, right? And so the way engineers think about this is like, well, those marketing guys don't know how to do their job, so I got to go do their job too, right? And so I started hanging out with the marketing guys. I figured out to do their job, I needed to understand accounting. And so I kind of became like the nerd that spoke business or the business guy that spoke nerd, depending on which side of that wall you were on.
Yep.
And so I got drafted onto a team that was doing some acquisitions. We were trying to grow through acquisition. And going out and evaluating businesses and trying to buy entrepreneur-led businesses was so much fun. Each one was like this puzzle of how does it work and why does it work and what can we do to make more money from this puzzle or this tool. And so over a number of years, we looked at about 100 businesses. We bought about 10 of them. And one of the businesses that we bought, the owner of the company said, well, Brad, why don't you run this business? You seem excited about it. And so I went and I was general manager there for a couple of years and then did that for another acquisition that we had purchased and just kind of got excited about the nuts and bolts of what makes businesses work and what makes them grow and what makes them more valuable. And in 2001, I was finishing up one of those gigs. And if you remember what was happening financially in 2001, we weren't going to be buying any businesses that year or probably the year after that. And so I switched sides of the table and started working on behalf of entrepreneurs, helping them to prepare their business for sale. And did that a couple of times. And when we got ready to sell it, I said, okay, we've cleaned everything up. We've got the cash flow improved. We've gotten rid of all those employees that weren't really doing anything. Let's put this thing on the market. And the owner's like, well, why would I want to sell it? This business is great.
Right.
So I just gave up the selling it thing and have started working with service firm owners, helping them to grow their business.
So primarily service businesses, right?
Yes, almost all service businesses.
Let's dive right into that. What would you say is the most common misconception about selling a services business?
So when we go to sell our service business, we have a certain idea of the things that make it valuable. We've been around for a long time. We have a certain reputation. You know, we have this magic process that we're using to deliver results. And when people come from the outside, they don't value much of any of those things. Like your reputation is great, but only if it's producing inbound leads. And your magic formula is great, but then you should be able to show that your margins are higher than other people because of your magic formula, right? And yes, you've been in business a long time, but every year you start with a blank slate. Nobody's hiring you for a second time or a third time or a fourth time. That's not super interesting to us. And so the way that outsiders look at a business is its ability to generate cash flow. That's the thing that they want out of the business. They're buying it as an investment in many cases, or if not, they're financing it like an investment. And so your ability for the business to produce consistent cash flow is really what drives the value of the business.
You're speaking with thousands of architects, lots of small firm architects. Many of them are just starting.
Yes.
What would you say you wish more firm owners knew earlier on in the process for those firm owners who are starting today and do dream of building this big, successful firm?
One of the things that I said, and you read it in the introduction, is that the thing that's most likely stopping your firm's growth is you. And there's two ways that I see that architects and other sort of technical people block the growth of their firms. One is that they love doing the thing.
Right.
They love designing the house or making the drawings or whatever it is, that technical part. The more of that you're doing, the more you're holding back the growth of your firm. Because that technical work is stuff that it's easy to hire other people to do. Whereas the selling, getting new clients, managing projects, figuring out how to do things more profitably, that's stuff that only you can do. And so being willing to let go of the technical work so that you can spend your time on the higher value work, which is building the business, that is one thing that really gets in the way of people growing their firms.
Yes, for sure. What would you say to those architects that say, I like the technical work,
Yeah.
right? I became an architect because I love to design
Sure.
buildings. What do you say to those people?
You can do that. I mean, that's fine. It's just that you're not going to have a very big firm.
Right.
And the more of that you end up doing, the more your firm tends to, it's hard to have consistent growth, right? When you're doing the work of making the drawings and designing things, you experience a lot more ups and downs in the business part of your business. And eventually that gets exhausting. It's just hard to manage that. And so you can go work for another firm and you can design all day long. But if you want to grow your own firm, that's just a reality. The lower value stuff, the stuff that's easy to hire people for, is stuff that you shouldn't be spending as much of your time on.
There is also an opportunity to start that way and then put the effort in, put the work in, put the focus in to build the business, have it be more sustainable, be more effective, bring in a lot more revenue, hire people to do all the things you don't like doing, and then go back and start drawing and designing again.
Absolutely, you can. Yeah. And there are a lot of people who will hire someone who likes doing that business stuff. You know, that there are ways to hire help in that. But there are some things that the principal in the firm has to be able to do.
Right.
You have to be able to generate clients, and you have to be able to understand where the market's going and kind of align your services toward where the market's going. And you have to be able to analyze profitability and know what is driving the financial side of your business. Even if you have help, it's still going to rely on you to be able to do some of those things.
Let's talk about value. What drives the firm's valuation? You know, when somebody's going to buy a firm, what are they looking for?
So the shortcut things that people are going to look at when they're buying a firm are multiples. And when we talk about multiples, the short math that people use to buy a firm is either a multiple of fees or a multiple of cash flow. And oftentimes they use this fancy word called EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation and amortization. EBITDA is essentially cash flow. And most people want to buy a firm at a 4 to 6 multiple of EBITDA. Unless you've got a lot of growth or there's something really special about you, it's going to be in that kind of 4 to 6 range, which typically turns out to be about one-time fees. And so those are the things that people on a first blush are saying, okay, how much cash flow is your business generating? Or if you're being purchased by another similar firm where they know they can eliminate a lot of your cost structure, they might look just at fees because they know how they can turn fees into earnings on their side.
When you're putting all this together, you understand how a firm is valued.
Yeah.
You understand that you want to get to that point where you want to build a firm that works. What does a typical exit look like, right? Because I want to sort of build out the whole model for somebody, and then we can dive into the details of that. So what does an exit or the potential opportunities for exit look like for an architecture firm?
Can I back up from that by one step?
For sure.
So when I start talking to people about exits, I tell them there's 3 levers that you have to pull when you're exiting. You can try to maximize the amount of money that you get out of this transaction.
Okay.
You can choose the day on which you want to get out, or you can have some influence over the legacy of the firm about what the firm is going to be after the transaction.
Got it.
But you can only maximize one of those factors. And depending on which of those factors you want to maximize, you might have a different process by which you're going to exit the business.
Okay. So let's go through those. So basically value, legacy, and timing, right? Are sort of the 3 things that we're talking about.
That's right.
Let's talk about each one of those. So let's focus if somebody wants to get the most money out of their firm as possible, the most value from their firm, what should they be focused on?
typically the maximum valuation can be paid by someone who is essentially a competitor of yours, who can absorb your firm's revenue and book of business into their larger organization. That maximizes the value because they know what they can pay and they know how they can drive additional value from your book of business and from your reputation. And so they're going to pay the most for that book of business, for that business.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
And the thing about selling to a competitor is that you have to sell on the day that they want to buy. And so the way that we maximize the value is that essentially the firm is always for sale. And we start talking long ahead of the time when we want to exit. We start talking to different strategic partners, and maybe we're doing some projects with them. Maybe we're, co-designing or working together on various aspects of a project so that we can get to know them, so that on the day that they sit around their partner meeting and say, we should buy another firm, you're the firm that they think of, and they're going to come to you and decide, and start talking about that. And so it could be when you're 40, it could be when you're 67. You don't know when that's going to happen, but you're always building those relationships in such a way so that when people call, you're ready to have that conversation.
So that sounds like something that you need to start thinking about right up front.
Yes.
As you start to put together the firm with this mindset that someday you might sell it. Because now throughout your career, you are starting to identify people who might be those strategic partners that you can start developing relationships with. Interesting. Okay.
And, depending on where you are in your career progression, it might be a situation where you end up joining that firm because you have some value, some connections, some abilities that they want to add. Or it might be that they're just going to buy your book and they want you to walk away. And, all of those things are possibilities.
So if you want the most for your firm, there's some planning to do.
Yes.
And some legwork to do and some relationship building to do. So you're building a network of potential buyers with one of these people, one of these firms in the future being interested in acquiring you.
That's right.
All right. So what's the next? That's value. Is there anything else with value that we should talk about?
The other thing about value is, particularly if you don't want to stay with the newly acquired firm,
right,
it's important that you build your firm in such a way so that you are not essential to any particular part of the firm. And so that's why we get you out of the technical stuff first, but then we're starting to build that middle management layer where there's someone handling the finances, and you have a business development program where you're just showing up to, shake hands and kiss babies. And the more that you can pull yourself out of it, the more that you can sell that business without being encumbered to the seller.
Right. Which also gives you lots more time to design.
Exactly. That's true. That's absolutely true. Right. You can take on the very best stuff.
Yeah. Because if you're not essential anymore, then you can do whatever you want.
That's right.
And make the money doing it. All right. The next one's legacy. Can you dive into legacy a little bit?
So if it's important to you that the name of the firm survives, or that, there are people on your team that you want to have be the kind of people who are going to carry this business forward, then the most likely way you're going to sell this business is to your employees. And that's a very common way that professional services firms are sold, and particularly that architecture firms are sold. But it also requires planning. This is not something that you can wake up on a Thursday and say, I'm going to sell this to my employees on Monday. We need to bring them into the business as business partners long before they're equity partners. And so not only are we pulling you out of some of that day-to-day of the business, but we're actually intentionally teaching the other people in your organization how to do some of that stuff, how to do the business development and the project management, and how to evaluate the profitability of different projects and lines of business. Because we want to develop them not just as architects, but as business leaders, so that they're going to be capable of taking this business on when it is that you want to exit.
Yeah. As you're talking about this, it's reminding me that this is not something that you want to think about, 3 to 5 years before
That's right.
you want to sell, which is usually what happens with architects. They're like, oh, I'm going to do this forever. And then somewhere around, 55, 60 years old, I'm like, maybe I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And then you start thinking about how you're going to get out of this.
Can we just talk about that moment for a minute? Because I think that's really important, that we do think we're going to do it forever and we're enjoying it, right?
Right.
Until we're not, right?
Right.
And the thing that I find that makes most people say, okay, I'm done with this, is one of two things. It's either clients or it's employees. Those are the things that drive us to the point of like, I just cannot have this meeting one more time, right? And if you're starting to pull yourself out, if you're starting to move away from some of the day-to-day of the business, it gives you relief from those things that make you want to quit. And so even if you think you want to be in this forever, starting to peel off certain parts of your job, the parts that you don't love, that make it a long day instead of an exciting day, that will get you past that hump where you're all of a sudden like, I can't do this anymore.
So anything else with legacy? So the idea of legacy is to do an internal sale.
Yeah.
And there's some, again, long-term planning and preparation that you need to take into account, getting the right people in the right seats, giving them the right responsibilities, right roles, basically taking things over from you, much like the first one that we talked about, but now instead of an external sale, you're talking about an internal sale. Is there anything else about legacy we should talk about?
So the big hurdle for internal sales is financing. And there are a couple things to think about along those lines. I think where people's minds initially go is just to make people partners and to bring them into equity ownership right away. Having business partners is sort of a tax on the business. Like, you have a lot of conversations that you don't have to have if you don't have business partners. And you have disagreements, you have doubts, you have people that are not well aligned. And so there are ways to practice that before you get married, to date, if you will, through phantom equity deal. There are other ways that you can create some ownership where you're not giving up equity shares right from the get-go. And so there are some creative financing strategies that I would want to talk to people about how they can make that transition without it being such a huge downstroke for the acquirers.
Can you dive a little bit deeper into phantom equity just so people understand what that means?
Absolutely. So if I bring someone on as a business partner and I give them actual equity shares in the business,
right,
then three things come with that. One is we're letting them into the decision making. So we don't get to make all the decisions ourselves. Now, when you have minority partners, they don't have very much leverage, but that in itself turns out to be a problem because it doesn't meet the expectations that your new business partner has. They want to be influential in the decision making, but they only own 5% of the business. And so they really don't have any leverage. And so that in and of itself can create friction. The second thing is those people are entitled to some distribution from the profits. And in fact, you need to give them some distribution because they're going to get a K1 and the profits are going to flow through onto their tax return and they're going to have to pay tax on that. And so that starts a process by which their compensation changes in a way that may or may not be helpful for you. And then the third thing is, even though they're only a 5% owner, they're going to have to personally guarantee the lease. They're going to be on the hook if someone sues you, and not at a 5%. They're on for everything that they have. And so that's an uncomfortable situation for a lot of young architects or business partners. And so phantom equity is a way that we can reward them for the growth of the business without any of those things. They have no influence over the business. They have no liability, and we don't necessarily have to pay them dividends, but they can earn equity over time based on the increasing value of the firm. And so this allows them to grow some equity through sweat equity that then can be turned into a down payment that allows them to buy the business when the time comes.
So it's like giving them stock to your company, but without giving them this actual stock and everything that comes along with it.
That's exactly right.
So it sort of represents that they own a piece of the company in terms of equity. And so that at the end, when they actually sell, say they have 5% phantom stock, when you sell, you actually get 5% of whatever the sale is.
That's right.
In big, open terms.
If you sell it to an external partner, they would get 5% of it. If you're selling it to them, they already own the equivalent of 5%. And so they can use that as a down payment, which makes it easier for them to finance the rest of the purchase from you.
Right. And that could be more than 5%. It could be 20%.
It could be 10, it could be 30, it could be whatever. Yeah.
Let's take a quick break to say thank you to our sponsors for their support of this episode. Gain lessons learned and credits earned with Arcademy, ARCAT's continuing education program. Listen to popular episodes of the Detailed podcast and earn AIA-approved HSW credits. Yes, you heard that right, HSW credits for episodes of Detailed podcast. Listen to an episode, check out the learning objectives, and use what you've learned while listening to take the course. The program is free, it's simple, and can be found at arcat.com under the Resources tab, or just go to arcat.com/arcademy. That's arcat.com/arcatemy. That's arcat.com/arcademy. Please visit our sponsors today and thank them. Thank them for supporting you, the EntreArchitect community. The last one that you talked about in these big three items is timing.
Yes.
How does timing affect the exit?
So I come across a lot of firm owners who say, well, I'm going to retire when I turn 60. And I say, great. What if you had turned 60 in 2009? That would not have been a great time to sell your business, right?
Right.
And so you can do that. You can obviously choose that I'm going to sell it on a certain date. But if that's true, you really need to have some buyers lined up who are aligned with that timing. And it's going to definitely affect the value that you're going to get. It could be a great year. It could have been 2023 when things were fantastic and it was a perfect time to sell your business. But you can't control that in advance. And so when I talk to people about timing, what I typically say is, let's think about doing a strategic transaction, whether it's internal or strategic. You can do this either way, but it's easier with strategic. And let's talk about finding you a partner that's going to buy it that will allow you to stay active for a period of time. And so 5 years before that date, maybe you're making the transaction with a 5-year earnout where the amount of money that you're going to get depends on the performance of the firm over those next 5 years. And then at the end of that, you're released. And so again, it's not a thing where you can wake up on Thursday and say, I'm going to sell it on Monday. But if you want to leave when you're 60, you can do that if you sell it when you're 55.
Yes. Interesting. It sounds like throughout these three, lots of planning.
That's right.
Right. Lots of putting together how this is going to work from the beginning. It's not a 5-year plan. This is a 10, 15, 20-year plan.
Yes.
There are ways to do it in 5 years, but you're not going to get your maximum value.
That's right.
Potentially not get the maximum value for it. Depends on what you've built, obviously. So those are the three. Any other thoughts on exits? We started talking about this with my question about exiting. Are there any other items in terms of exits for architecture firms?
The last piece of advice that I would give is that done well, you're going to do this one time in your life. And it will probably be the largest transaction that you make in your life. You don't want to do that without good advice. And so finding some people who are good at helping people to sell businesses, and like you're talking about, talk about it with them in advance. Don't wait until the end, but work with someone to help you to think through some of these things and to sit down with some other firm owners who have sold and ask them about what they went through and what worked and what didn't work. There's an education process to this that also takes some time.
Yeah. I wish more architects would think this way, because not only will they ultimately end up in a place where they can benefit from the firm that they've built, because so many architects literally just walk away.
Yes.
Right? They shut the lights off and they walk out the door and they're done.
Yeah.
And they get zero value from what they've built. But it also, throughout the process of their career, throughout the time of their career, they would have such a better experience of being an architect, because you would have the resources and the money that comes along with building a successful business, a thriving business that's ultimately sellable. Also benefits you throughout your career with the types of clients you can choose, the type of projects that you do, the type of work that you do, the role that you have, all comes from building a successful business. And so if you start your firm with this mindset from day one and build a firm knowing that someday you're building something that has value, that's an asset that you can use when you're ready to retire or not, right?
That's right.
Maybe you don't want to retire. Maybe you want to continue on forever, but at least you have a plan and you can benefit from all the work that you've put into it.
That's right. Yeah. And the point that you're making about putting the effort into running the business as professionally as possible, that just gives you choices. Money just gives you options, right? And so if you want to spend all day drawing, you can, if your firm is successful enough to employ the other people around you that can free you up to do that. If you want to spend half the year in Hawaii, you can do that. You know, I spend a lot of time with my clients helping them to look at What is it about this job that makes you happy? And then maximizing the amount of time that you're spending on that and minimize the time on the other stuff that doesn't make you happy. And part of the reason of making your own firm is that you get to make that choice. You get to decide what are the things that you want to do. And if you're doing it all, then you don't have those choices.
Right. So many architects, when they start, all they want to do is impact the world. They want to change the world through architecture. And I totally value that and I support that. But the best way to make an impact on the world is to be able to build a business that can support your effort in impacting the world.
That's right.
What do architects typically do wrong when they are putting together this plan, right? They have this mindset, they're going to do this, right? The biggest thing is to not do it at all. But let's say they do have the mindset, they want to build this thing, but you see, working with firms like ours, what are some of the things that they're either doing wrong or they should be warned about?
So a concept that I talk to a lot of firm owners about is time horizon. That when we start our firm, we're working in just a few week time horizon. How do I get through the end of the month? How do I get through the end of the next month? Right. And then hopefully you grow your firm to the point where you're going to be in business for a while, you have money in the bank for payroll, and you start looking further out. Your time horizon grows to where you're looking a couple of months out or maybe 6 months out. And you're starting to think about what's happening in the industry or with my clients or with the technology that I need to incorporate into my firm. That longer term vision, as you start to extend your vision out, that also helps you when you're exiting. That again, if you're stuck in the day to day, if a bad client meeting means you're going to have to work all the way through the weekend, you're not going to be able to give enough time and attention to the strategic issues of selling your business or growing your team. And all of those things are going to impact your ability to sell. And so early on, thinking about how do I grow my team, not just in terms of number of people, but grow their capability so that they have the ability to get me out of the weeds so that I can extend that time horizon. I think that's something that really impacts people's ability to focus on. Because the sale, like you said, it's a 5-year time horizon. So you're really working on stuff that is not going to impact the business in the short term, which means your attention can't be required on those short-term items.
When does a firm owner know that they got to the point where the firm is ready to sell? Right? They've done all this work. Is there sort of a time where you can evaluate the firm and say, okay, we're ready. Let's start, reaching out to those potential relationships that we've built?
So a healthy firm to me has a really solid operating margin. 20 to 30% operating margins in a good year. And part of the reason that you need those operating margins is this is a cyclical business. So when things come down, you don't want to go below zero.
Right.
You want to have the ability to be able to weather those storms. So to me, a firm that's ready to sell is operating at a high margin. Secondly, like we said, you're not in the details of every job. You have the ability to go on vacation for 2 weeks and the wheels don't fall off the bus. That's a really important thing that tells you that. And then, as you mentioned, we've seen a lot of owners that get to a certain point and they're like, I'm done. Once that happens, the value of your firm starts to decline pretty rapidly. It's very hard for you to keep up the same level of attention and effort.
Yeah.
And so selling before you get there, while you still have passion and energy for the business, rather than waiting until you get to the point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. And so that's another thing is that the minute that you see on the horizon, maybe I don't want to do this forever, that would be a time to sit down and talk about.
Right. As soon as that little thought pops into your head,
it's like I said,
execute.
The right time to fire someone is the first time you think, oh man, I'm going to have to fire this person.
Right.
Like,
right.
That's the time to make a plan. It's exactly the same with selling your business.
Right. Exactly. Right. Don't wait 6 months.
That's right.
Yeah. What about the type of work architects do? Does that impact the value? Do the clients, let's talk about both.
Yeah.
The type of work that you do, the projects that you do, as well as the type of clients that you have.
Mm-hmm. When you have repeat clients, that increases the value of the business. And so when I mean repeat clients, I'm not saying, well, 1 year we did a bathroom and then the next year we did a kitchen. I'm talking about, we're doing large projects over and over again for people. So if you have developers or institutions that are coming back, it doesn't have to be every year, but every 2 or 3 years you're doing a project with them, that makes a much more valuable business. B2B contracts are more valuable than consumer contracts. If you're working for the end user, if you're doing a lot of residential work, that can be a very profitable niche, but it is much more unstable. It's much more impacted by the macroeconomic indicators.
And often residential work is very personality based.
Right. That's another great point is if what you're selling is your design sensibility, if, Mark is the guy that I want because of his style, that's much harder to sell, obviously, because you're not coming with that deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can build residential firms around a brand and around the systems that you build and still have very high quality architecture.
Yes.
It's the danger of saying, okay, this is the Mark LePage studio and you're buying Mark LePage designs.
Yes.
And then you go to try to sell that, but Mark LePage wants to walk away and you have very little value left in that firm.
If you're building a residential studio, the thing that you're selling is whatever your lead generation strategy is. If you can show that you can turn money into leads,
Got it.
that's much less sensitive. Now you have a money machine that people can buy into. If it's all reputation, then it's very hard to.
Right, so it goes back to systems. And we've talked about that so many times here, is the importance and the impact that systems will have on the firm and the value. And now we're talking about the value of the firm.
Yes.
If you can come to a potential buyer and say, yeah, it's all built on me, but look at the system that does all this. It may take some effort for us to transition it to you, but it's a plug and play system that works with anybody. You can sell that to not just one person. You can sell that system to dozens of people.
You could have a whole different business of just selling the system. I mean, that's a very viable business model.
Right. Brad, is there anything else that we need to focus on and need to understand before we wrap things up here?
I think for a first cut, this is what people need to hear. I mean, there is a lot of technical issues around securing intellectual property, about how to finance a deal and what your involvement might be in financing a deal. But that's something that people don't really need to worry about until they're ready to sell and they want to get into the nitty-gritty.
Right. And then that's where we talk to an advisor.
Yes.
And that's the type of work that you do, right?
Yes. I mean, I'm primarily a leadership coach, helping people to expand their leadership so that they can grow their firms. When that happens, ultimately, we have these conversations about selling businesses. And so I have about 2 or 3 engagements a year where I'm helping somebody to sell.
Got it. So what's your primary focus? So I mean, you're talking to thousands of architects. Who are you looking to talk to in terms of the business side?
So if you're a firm leader who has a staff and you're trying to get out of that technical day-to-day and really build that middle management layer, I work with a lot of people in that growth phase to help them to understand what they need to do to move the needle on that, to pull themselves out of the day-to-day. And then there's a big existential crisis of, well, if I'm not doing that, then what am I doing? Okay. And then how do we measure that? And how do I measure my team? So helping to get from that, what I call the hub and spoke, where the entrepreneur is in the middle and then the team is all wrapped around them, to the point where you have a more command and control infrastructure, where you have team leaders in place and people are managing, you have managers managing your people and you're leading the leaders. That's the transition that I really help people with most often.
Yeah. From an architect's point of view, that sounds really nice to have all those people in place and doing the things they're supposed to be doing.
This is a good time to talk about an assessment that I have on my website. If you go to anchoradvisors.com/growth-phase, there's an assessment there. It's just 10 questions, and it helps you to see where you are in the process of growing your business. And when it gives you your growth phase, it also gives you some really practical next steps of things to work on to move toward the next growth stage. And you can get the results, without even giving me your email address. If you want to give me your email address at the end, I can give you more information about that. But it's just an easy way for you to see where you are and kind of what those next actions you can take are toward getting yourself out of the details and into maybe where you're ready to either buy or sell.
All right, great. Thanks for that. So that's anchoradvisors.com/growth-phase is where you can grab that assessment. Let's wrap up with our final question here, Brad. I'd love to hear your answer to this one. What's one thing that a small firm architect can do today to build a better business for tomorrow? It might be obvious based on what we just had our conversation on, but what's the one thing? What's the first thing that they should be focused on?
So the first phase of growing your leadership is learning to grow the leadership of yourself. When we're caught up in the day-to-day of doing the things, there's so much rushing back and forth from one thing to another. There's a lot of reacting to disasters that are coming at us, the contractor that didn't show up, the sink that is out of stock. And so we end up not being our best self, not leading as our best self, and transmitting a lot of that stress to our teams. And so the first step is to find some ways to ground yourself and to live from a place where you're responding as opposed to reacting, and where you're spending more of your day as your best self, so that when those things come up, you can deal with them without it sending you off into the stratosphere. And so there's a whole process around that of taking a little bit more time off, taking breaks during the day, having some grounding exercises that help you to stay in your best self. But that is the place where I usually start with people, is helping you to lead from that place of the true leader that you want to be, as opposed to being in the soup all the time.
I love it. His name is Brad Farris, 2 R's, Farris. Anchor Advisors is the company, anchoradvisors.com. And the free resource again is anchoradvisors.com/growth-phase. Brad Farris, thank you. Thanks for coming by here and sharing your knowledge here at Entre Architect Podcast.
Thanks.
If you liked this episode of Entre Architect Podcast, please share a link to this episode with a friend. Either just click the share button or highlight the URL and send the link to this episode with a friend, because that's how Entre Architect has grown to serve thousands more architects just like you throughout the 10 plus years of Entre Architect. That's how we've grown, architect to architect. So I would love for you to share this episode and all the episodes with one friend every week. We'd love that. And thank you to our sponsors for this episode. We don't have an episode if there's no sponsors. So thank you to our sponsors. Links to those sponsors, which you should go visit and click, and all the resources that we discussed today for this specific episode, they are all available at entrearchitect.com/podcast. Every episode that we've recorded is there, entrearchitect.com/podcast. Go click the links to the sponsors and say hello. Entre Architect is a member of the Gable Media Podcast Network. You should go visit that at gablemedia.com. That is the next evolution of interactive media and resources for the AEC community. You can now earn continuing education credits for listening to select episodes of this podcast, Entre Architect Podcast. Yes, AIA CEUs for listening to a podcast. It's there, and many other podcasts are there as well, and you can listen to all of them and get credit. Learn more about our program, Gable Members Program, at the gablemedia.com/members website. That's GABL media.com/members. And if you are a small firm architect, join us today at Entre Architect Network. That is the worldwide organization for small firm entrepreneur architects. If you own your own architecture firm, you are an entrepreneur architect. You are an Entre Architect. With weekly live group business coaching, we have business coaching there, monthly live business training with AIA CEUs, 2 a month, so 24 AIA credits per year, including 12 of those are HSWs. We have them in the membership. Business resources, all the resources you need to run your business, special session webinars, mastermind groups, and a thriving community of small firm architects just like you. Hundreds of architects are there waiting for you to join. So we provide the support and encouragement you need to succeed as a small firm architect. I know that you haven't been trained as a business person when you launched your firm. That's what we do. Come learn how to run a business at Entre Architect Network. And today you can go join right now for free for 30 days at this link, entrearchitect.com/30 days will give you free 30 days for membership. Go check it out at entrearchitect.com/30 days, and I will see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of Entre Architect Podcast. My name is Mark R. LePage, and I want you to remember 3 words: love, learn, share. Have a great day.
Imagine earning continuing education credits while doing exactly what you're doing right now. Well, you can. Gable Media has revolutionized the way you earn your continuing education credits with a groundbreaking approach. Forget running around town and scouring the internet for credit-worthy courses. Fulfill your CE requirements effortlessly by listening to engaging podcasts just like the one you're listening to now. Our podcasts are designed to educate, entertain, and inspire, all in a user-friendly environment. But wait, there's more. Architects, Gable Media is also approved as an AIA continuing education services provider. Upon completion, we handle everything, from reporting your hours directly to the AIA to storing your certificates in your personal Gable Media profile for your self-reporting needs. So follow the link in the show notes and start earning your credits in the most innovative and entertaining way possible with Gable Media.
Attention architects and creative minds, get ready to supercharge your brand with Build Your Brand, the podcast that's unlocking the secrets of branding success for creatives. Hey there, it's Mark Arlepage, founder of Entre Architect, and I'm inviting you to join my friend, architect marketing expert Jeff Eccles at Build Your Brand podcast, where he explores the captivating stories of the world's top brands and transforms their lessons into powerful moves for small firm architects and creatives like you. In Season 1, Jeff shares the thrilling tale of Southwest Airlines, where he dissects their journey to the summit and distills it into strategies tailor-made for you.
It's important to keep in mind that companies like Southwest compete in the real world, just like you, and face real-world challenges, just like you. You might be surprised at how similar those challenges are to the struggles that you grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Don't miss out on your blueprint for success. Subscribe, tune in, and let's build your brand together.
You may have noticed that the very best brands in the world are also known for having somewhat unique corporate cultures. That's often the glue that holds everything together when they encounter those rough spots.
We don't do it because it inconveniences the passengers to whom we are primarily dedicated, the short haul, frequent flyer.
Follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Your Brand today. Remember, no matter the size, the journey's the same. Your brand's journey to the top starts here.